everybody, and welcome to Automotive's favorite game show, Guess That Noise. I'm your host, Mr. G. Today our special guest is a 2002 Corvette Z06 with a squeak at the front of the engine. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a procedure to see if we can identify which component at the front of the engine is causing that squeak. Stay tuned. Hey folks, this is Mr. G and welcome to Just Corvette Crazy. On this channel we talk about Corvettes, we fix some Corvettes, and we love to drive our Corvettes. So if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out a lot. Thanks. Thanks for sticking around. So, before we start playing, you need to know the rules of the game. Rule number 1, be able to identify a good noise, a bad noise, again, a good noise, and a bad noise. So hopefully you heard the squeak that's coming from the belt drive system at the front of the engine. Our job today is see if we can identify which component in that belt drive system is causing the squeak noise. And then we can go ahead and repair it. So what we need to do first is get an idea of what components are actually in that system. So one of the first things that you need to do is a little bit of research. Go find yourself a diagram of the belt and pulley systems for your car, just like the one that I have right here. From this diagram, I can determine that there are two systems in play, two separate belts. The first one is a serpentine belt. The serpentine belt and its components are as follows. There's the belt, there is the alternator, water pump, power steering pump, idler, tensioner, and the harmonic balancer. So there are 7 components on that one system that could be causing the squeaking noise. The other system, there's a belt, there is an idler, tensioner, air conditioning compressor, and the harmonic balancer. So there's 5 components there. So our job is to try and figure out which of those components is causing the squeak, because any of those components can be the cause of this squeak that we are hearing. So what we're going to be doing is running through a procedure to see if we can eliminate things that are not causing it and perform some tests to figure out what is causing that squeaking noise. So a few things that we're going to require for this. One is a mechanic's stethoscope. So basically it's like a doctor's stethoscope where we have a listening device at the end, and what it does is it amplifies any kind of vibration or any kind of knocking or ticking noise and allows us to be able to hear it. So we can poke around at the different components of the engine of that belt system to see if we can detect which one is causing the squeaking noise. But before we do that, we're going to do a very simple old school mechanics test. Something that my father taught me when I was a kid. What you require is a bar of soap. What we're going to do is the first thing we are going to try to eliminate the belt as the cause. So what we're going to do is I just took a bar of soap. This is half of a bar of soap. You start up the car, and then you take the bar of soap and you put it against the belt. So you go against the side of the belt, underneath the belt, the other side of the belt. And what you're doing is you're coating the belt with a very, very thin layer of the powdery soap that you get. If the belt is the cause of the squeaking noise, the soap will have an effect on that noise. So remember, a squeaky belt is normally a dry, old belt that has some shiny parts on it. And what we're doing is we are coating the belt with something that will allow it to glide more smoothly around on the pulleys. So therefore, if the belt is the cause of the squeak, when we apply the soap, that squeak should either go away temporarily or at least be reduced. So what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to go ahead and on the main serpentine belt, we're going to apply some of this soap and see if the noise goes away. So I'm hoping that the camera picks up the squeaking noise. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lower the camera down a little bit, see if I can get a better view for you. Okay, so again, what I'm going to do is very carefully take the bar of soap and put it on the belt. So watch your fingers, be very, very careful with what you're doing. So what you're going to do is take the bar of soap and you're going to basically let the belt run through the bar of soap. And if you notice any difference in the squeaking noise, then it's the belt that's causing that noise. Here we go. So, hopefully you notice, as soon as I touched that belt with the soap, the noise went completely away. There's no squeaking whatsoever now. This is a temporary measure, but it tells me that the squeaking noise is coming from the belt and the belt only. Putting soap on the belt will not affect any other component in that system. So, soap on the belt causes the noise to stop. So we can conclude that in this particular case, one little test, we were able to figure out that the squeak is coming from the belt. Alright, so what do we do now if applying the soap to the belt does not change the squeaking noise? Well, that's when we put on our stethoscope. And what we're going to do is, with the engine running, we are going to hold the stethoscope against the different components and listen for which component makes the loudest squeaking noise. That will help us determine whether or not it's the alternator, if it's the idler. Now, there's a few other things that we can do. We can remove the belt itself and then use our hands and spin the components. to see if we hear any kind of a squeak. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. The reason why it doesn't work all the time is because when the belt is on, the belt actually is having a pulling force on all of the bearings. So instead of the bearings just running free, they actually have force pulling them to one direction, which could cause a squeaking noise. So if the problem is in the alternator, or in one of the pulleys, or in the water pump, power steering pump, chances are it's the bearing that's going bad. So we're going to listen with the stethoscope. We can spin them with our hands to determine whether or not they're spinning freely, and try and eliminate what is not causing the squeak, so that when we're done, what we're left with are the possibilities of what is actually causing that squeak. Now, remember, there's another belt system on the other side of the car for the air conditioning unit. And again, we've got the belt, the air conditioning compressor, idler pulley, and we've got the tensioner and the harmonic balancer. So we can do the same thing, put the soap on that belt to see if the squeak goes away. We could also use our stethoscope or pull that belt as well and spin things with our hand just to see if we can determine which of the bearings is going bad. Now, it is a very common issue with these generation Corvettes that we have a harmonic balancer that goes bad. So I'm just going to spend a minute and tell you about the harmonic balancer and how you can check it. Alright, so a harmonic balancer. Basically, a harmonic balancer is a pulley, a steel pulley that's attached to the crankshaft. Then there's a rubber piece on top of that pulley, and then on top of the rubber piece is another steel pulley. So there are three parts to a harmonic balancer. There's the inner pulley, the rubber, and then the outer pulley. So the inner pulley sits and spins with the crankshaft. The outer pulley is where your belts are riding. In between them is a rubber piece that insulates the crankshaft from the belts and the rest of the system. So what it does is it dampens any vibrations. So that job of the rubber is to dampen the vibrations from the crank out to the pulleys, and from the pulleys down to the crank. What happens over time is that rubber piece starts to wear out, and we start getting a wobble on the harmonic balancer. That's how we know it's time to look at changing the harmonic balancer. One of the other ways to do it, and I'm going to show you how it's done, but we have the inner pulley, the rubber, and then the outer pulley. They are all supposed to work as one. They are all supposed to spin as one unit. But over time, things start to slip. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to paint a line across the harmonic balancer, across the front of all three components. So the inner pulley, the rubber, and the outer pulley. And we're going to paint a line. And what that line does is it shows us if there are any slippage between the three components. So if that line breaks, so again, we look at the paint And if that paint is not a straight line anymore, something has shifted, that's a sign that it's time to replace the harmonic balancer. So I'm going to try and show you how to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint a line across the front of the harmonic balancer, and then over time you can watch that line, and if the line shifts, so that means that parts are slipping on top of each other, then it's time to replace that harmonic balancer. So let's see how that's done. All right, so we're looking at the harmonic balancer. So we've got an outer steel ring, and that's the part that the belt rides on. There's an inner steel part, and that's the part that goes to the crank. And then they are separated by this rubber insulator. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint a line across the front of this so that we can see if at any time we start getting separation between the steel and the rubber. Okay, so I'm just using some silver paint, and what I'm going to be doing is just on the face, I'm going to be painting a line, just like that. Now, if somewhere down the line, that line separates, then I've got a problem with my harmonic balancer. So if there's slippage, I will see it in that paint, and I will know that my harmonic balancer needs to be swapped out. So again, I'm just using some silver paint and a little brush, put a line, and it's something that you can monitor over time to see if there's any slippage in that harmonic balancer. Well, we've come to the end of another one of our videos. I really hope this video helped you out a little bit. So if you are getting a squeaking noise from the front of your car, and it doesn't matter if it's a Corvette or any other vehicle, you can run through the same procedure to try and identify which component is causing the squeak. Luckily for me, the first one we looked at was the belt, and that's what was causing the squeak. So we took the bar of soap and we basically ran the belt through the bar of soap, and the squeak went away. That means that the belt is the cause of my squeak. So I'm going to go ahead, order some belts up, do a belt swap. And I'll do the air conditioning belt as well, since I have it all apart. So the idea is, first of all, take a look at the system. We've got, in this example, 2 belts, and they are running different components. You want to eliminate the belts as the possibility by doing the soap test. Then put on your stethoscopes. Stethoscopes, mechanic stethoscopes, $10 at local automotive place. I picked mine up for under 10. And you're going to listen for whatever component gives you the loudest squeak when the motor is running. Another thing you can do is to remove the belts and spin the pulleys by hand to listen for a squeak. It is process of elimination. If you can eliminate the things that are not squeaking, the last one is the one that's going to be causing your squeak. Also, showed you how to monitor your harmonic balancer. Paint a line across the front of the harmonic balancer. Monitor it over time. If there's slippage between the 3 parts, you will see it in that paint. So the line will not be straight anymore. That's how you can tell that your harmonic balancer needs to be replaced. So another thing to look for is your harmonic balancer wobble. So if you notice a distinct wobble in the harmonic balancer, that means that the rubber piece in between is starting to fail and you're not getting a solid rotational mass. So things are starting to give way. Again, look at replacing the harmonic balancer. So I hope this video will help you out somewhere down the line. Please subscribe to the channel, it really helps us out a lot. So until next time, Mr. G says, keep the rubber side down, everybody. Take care.